and I have a copy of the release that was signed by both Mr. Baralt and Mrs. Baralt that I wanted to show to him.
Did the defense wish to respond to
We
these?
object on relevancy grounds.
As to which?
On both those items, and also on right to counsel grounds. I don't think it's proper to comment on attorney's fees.
Beyond that, Your Honor, that's not exactly what happened anyway. I mean, what happened in probate court was the probate court approved a family allowance. And from that, the attorney fees and costs were paid. And it had nothing to do with being conditioned on any conversations with the defendants. The terms of this were negotiated through probate lawyers, probate lawyer for the defendants, and the probate lawyer paid probate lawyers for other members of the family. And it was all drafted in documents that were sealed by the probate court.
Well, I don't quite understand what you're saying as far as what happened.
Well, what I'm saying is it's not as if Mr. Baralt wrote a check for attorney fees. That's not what happened in this case. And so I guess the objection is also relevant because Mrs. Kazanich is under some mistaken impression about how the attorney fees were paid in this case or what was involved in providing that money for the defendants to use for that purpose. And to allow her to simply ask about conversations he may have had with the defendants on the specious theory that it's somehow relevant to his payment of attorney fees on the specious theory that that's somehow relevant to the case is my point. And how our fees are relevant, fail to say.
Well, if there was a conversation between the witness and the defendants regarding this case, it would seem to be relevant.
But they're fishing. They don't know about any such conversation.
Well, they have no way of knowing until they ask. You would prefer them not to ask, but they have a right to ask.
The court allowed in extensive evidence about the fact that the defendants had made false statements, presumably on a consciousness of guilt theory. That is, that they had lied about the offense and therefore that showed a consciousness of guilt. Now the people seem to be saying that the reason that they lied was not because of a consciousness of guilt, but because they wanted to manipulate the executor of the estate to pay them attorney's fees. And the reason why they made the false statement, it doesn't seem to me is probative of any issue that's in dispute in this case.
Well, I don't understand from the people's offer that they were going to ask the witness why he had the conversation with the defendants, just what the conversation was. Maybe I misunderstood.
I thought the offer of proof was going toward showing that the defendants had manipulated the reason they were lying was so that the estate would pay the attorney's fees.
Your Honor, the defendants were not incarcerated until March of 1990, and therefore there are many reasons for them to have told the truth about their participation. As the court knows from the evidence early on, both Menendez brothers stayed with the Baralts. In fact, the September 17th conversations in 1989 were at home. The intent of this is Mr. Baralt is the executor of the estate, and he is responsible for making sure that the assets are protected. In proclaiming their innocence, that aided in them obtaining the assets of the estate for the purpose of paying the attorney's fees. And so I want to talk about the fact that these attorney's fees were authorized prior to the defense admitting that they in fact were responsible for the town's debts.
So, and that argument seems to me to raise an inference that they somehow defrauded the estate for the purpose of getting attorney's fees, and it's not probative of any issue that we're disputing here. Certainly the fact they made false statements to the executor has been ruled admissible, but the reason they made those false statements, and especially if the reason involves defrauding the estate, has nothing to do with the issues in this case and is more prejudicial than probative, and is also character evidence, it seems to me.
Well, I don't know if this witness is in a position to say why the defendants lied.
I'd like to at least ask them if prior to the payment of the fees by the estate, the defendants had confessed their participation in the crime. And I think the inference can clearly be drawn that that statement of responsibility did not occur until the estate signed on to pay the attorney's fees. And I wasn't going to ask about the amount or anything else, just the fact of who was paying them.
Your Honor, perhaps an offer of proof will short circuit this, but I believe the witness would testify that they were told in the fall of 1990 that that the boys were responsible for this,
Long
for the
before
killing of the
attorney
parents,
fees
and
were
the
paid.
attorney's fees were not approved until the following January,
No, later than that.
whatever. I don't know. That wasn't my issue at that time, but
Well, I don't know
so
what the
perhaps
facts are. If the people want to pursue it and ask the question, I don't know where it would lead. It might be counterproductive to their purpose. I don't know.
We're trying to tell them that, but the problem is that,
Well, one other thing you mentioned, a family allowance. What was that all about?
well, that's the method by which money could be released from the estate. The estate could not directly pay attorney fees.
Was there some agreement by others involved or who might be
All
heirs?
potential heirs agreed that the money could be assigned as a family allowance under the terms of a contract that would pay for legal costs and classification fees for the attorneys.
There were three such people, Your Honor. Mr. Farian was getting the probate file. It was Charles Anderson, who's now deceased, his second wife, I believe her name was Doris, and Maria Menendez, who's the paternal grandmother of the defendants. And from the dates of those documents, I should be able to determine.
And these were the only other heirs to the estate?
They were those were the people next in line who would have a claim against the estate in the event that the defendants were convicted of voluntary manslaughter or above.
This was a provision in the will that they were next in line to inherit, or is this?
No,
Operation of law, Your Honor.
yeah, the will didn't state any contingent beneficiaries after the defendants. So by operation of law, the next tier of inheritors would have been the parents of the decedents.
And that's who you've been referring to then, these people that you've named are the parents.
The three people,
Okay.
yes, but the Baralts, of course, as the court knows, are relatives on the same generational level as Mr. Menendez. But they were the executors of the estate, not the people who could make a claim. In order to keep inheritance from occurring, and I don't know if the court knows this or not, but I learned during this case that in order to keep a killer from benefiting from it, someone has to file a petition. It doesn't operate by matter of law, so that if there's no one to file a petition to stop the inheritance, it can still occur even if you're convicted of first-degree murder. So these are the three people that would have been in a position to stop the inheritance, and they signed off basically and said that they would waive their rights or interests.
Well, but that's also confusing. There's been no decision on inheritance or rights to inherit. All this was an agreement that a certain amount of money could be allocated as a family allowance to provide for the necessary needs of a named beneficiary. And the most pressing needs for these named beneficiaries was to provide them with a legal defense to the murder charges. And on that basis, and that was approved, that was approved by the probate court and filed, and the monies were then released to a trust account, and from the trust account, they were paid out according to a schedule for costs and fees. And I don't believe any of that actually started to happen until February or March of '91.
Well, regardless of all that, the people's intent, as far as why you wanted to introduce this evidence, was to show the defendants lied at a particular time, and the response of the defense is that they will offer evidence that the defendants admitted their involvement prior to this event occurring. Assuming that is true, then the purpose for which you wanted to ask the question doesn't seem to exist.
What I'd like to do then is to not excuse this witness until I have a chance to both get the documents out of the probate file I need and then represent this to the court once I can establish when these the three contingent beneficiaries in fact signed off on the estate. So could we just go ahead and proceed, and then if I can establish what I think is a cogent argument, represent and recall the witness for those purposes.
Certainly.
All right, and the other thing I intend to do is to go over the fact that he, as the executor of the estate, waived Mrs. Menendez's privilege. And that in so waiving, he also signed a document which said, do not disclose this information to anyone any other person, including the district attorney's office or the investigators from the Beverly Hills Police Department. And I intend to show this, to give this to him as evidence of bias.
Well, it certainly does relate to that issue. I don't see how you defense can argue otherwise.
Well, it's the assertion of a claim of privilege.
Well, it's a waiver of a claim of privilege.
An assertion of the rest of the privilege, you can
It's a
allow
limited
that.
waiver, and he's asserting the privilege as to anyone else other than
But it's
Menendez.
also a showing of bias.
He could have waived it to the prosecution too, but he chose not to. And he's the executive of the state, he is not an agent of the defendants.
It's clearly a demonstration of bias on his part that he wanted to assist the defense and foreclose the prosecution from seeing the same information he was providing to the defense.
My point is, because it's an assertion of a claim of privilege, it's ambiguous as to why it's being, he may feel an obligation as the executor to assert the privilege, but in any event, it's the comment on the assertion of a privilege which is improper.
Well, ultimately, the privilege has been waived in its entirety, whether it was by this individual or someone else, I don't know, but the information has been provided to the prosecution as well. So it can all be explained, and there is no comment on the exercise per se. It's a demonstration of his attitude towards the action. I think if there is any fallout because of a comment on the privilege, certainly the court finds that the probative value of demonstration of bias outweighs any prejudice that might be derived from that.
Our objections under Evidence Code Section 913, Your Honor, which sets forth the rule that I cited to the court that
All right, well, I'll have to reevaluate my ruling then, Mrs. Bozanic, based on that code section, if you want to research it.
Yes, I'd like to look at that, but more importantly, I'd like to point out that how can he make a limited waiver? In other words, he either waives the privilege or he doesn't waive it. There's no provision. It's not like he is a client that's waiving the privilege to communicate with someone else to advance his own purposes. You know, it's not the same exercise of the privilege. For instance, when Eric Menendez signs the waiver of confidentiality with Dr. Oziel, that is for the purpose of advancing the interests of his therapy, and therefore he makes a limited waiver for a period of time. In this particular case, there is no interest to be advanced on the part of the privilege holder. The privilege holder is the estate of Mrs. Menendez, and let's assume, for the sake of argument, that she was not related to these defendants, but was just a stranger who they had happened upon and killed in a residential burglary. There's no reason or there's no ability for this person to give a limited waiver. What interest is being advanced of his or the privilege holder or the estate's interest? The estate's interest and the defendant's interest are not the same. And so it appears to me that this is a manufactured waiver. In other words, they're saying it's limited for their own purposes, but how can you waive the privilege just for any purpose you deem fit? He's waived the privilege.
Well, I think she's confusing two things. The portion of the waiver she wants to call attention to is that he asserted the privilege with respect to the prosecution. And it may be that after assertion of that privilege, the court can come in and say, as a matter of law, you can't have that sort of limited assertion of the privilege. But he clearly, the action he took here was assertion of the privilege with respect to the prosecution. And 913 would seem to prohibit his assertion, whatever the court may ultimately decide as to whether he can assert it or not, he is asserting that privilege. And I think that the intent of this section is to prohibit comment on that assertion.
That would seem to be the nature of the section. It doesn't, I agree with the prosecution, doesn't make a lot of sense in this context, but that's the way the code section reads.
So you can assert a privilege that you don't have a right to assert, and therefore the people cannot comment on that. He doesn't have a right to assert a privilege as to the prosecution. He either has the privilege or he doesn't.
Again, the issue is the assertion of the privilege and whether there can be disclosure of that assertion and or comment on it, not whether the assertion is a valid one or not.
Well, what if it had merely said, don't give this information to the prosecution, which is basically what it says. I don't know if the court needs to see the
Well,
document.
you read it to me.
If the document says don't give it to the prosecution, that's not an assertion of the privilege. That's all it says. He's basically He's basically waiving privilege and refusing to disclose it to the district attorney's
All
office.
right. Did you read it to me accurately, or do you want me to read
I'll
it?
read it again. Pursuant to confidential and privileged communication laws, which I contend don't apply here, do not disclose information to or have any discussion with any person or agency, including, and then it goes on with the DA and the Beverly Hills Police. All prior authorizations for release of information are hereby canceled. And so it's the people's position that he doesn't stand in a privileged relationship with the defendant. He doesn't stand in a privileged relationship with Mrs. Menendez's psychotherapist. He doesn't stand in a privileged relationship with anyone, so he can't conditionally waive the privilege. Just because someone drafts a document that says he can doesn't mean he can't.
No, we're again talking about whether it's valid or not, or what it would be legally effective or not. That's one issue. The other is whether or not he was asserting the privilege, and whether it was a proper or improper assertion, whether or not you can comment on it.
Okay, how about an analogy? Witness takes the witness stand, asserts the fifth. The court rules you don't have the Fifth Amendment privilege. The witness says, I'm not going to testify. The people should be allowed to comment on the fact this person is refusing to testify. Perhaps the people can't comment that he took the fifth, even though he had no right to do so. But his failure to cooperate should be something, there's no assertion of a privilege that the people are commenting on, his failing to cooperate. Likewise, in this particular matter, the people should be able to say, you made this information available to the defense, you waived this privilege, and yet you did not make it available to the prosecution. It's not a comment, doesn't have a valid right to claim the privilege, so it's not a comment on that. It's a comment on lack of cooperation.
I don't understand counsel's position that he doesn't have the right to claim the privilege as the executor of the estate, and until an estate is closed, he does have the decedent's privileges, all of them.
All right, we're still talking about two different things, whether there is a proper assertion of a privilege,
Right,
and whether there can be a comment on a assertion of a privilege, whether that is properly asserted or not. And that's what the people want to do, the comment on the assertion of the privilege. And at this point, based on the language of Section 913, it seems that you cannot do it. Now, if you wanted to look at the annotations and pursue it in some fashion, you can do that.
And I would ask that this witness not be excused until these matters are resolved.
All right, I agree with you. It's certainly probative on the issue of bias. And it's something that looking at it without considering Section 913 is something that the jury should hear. But if there is a specific code section that precludes it, then that's the law. All right, so anything else now before we proceed? We're getting a late start this morning because we had a juror who had some transportation problems, and I think everyone is here. Let's have the gold jury in first. I want to speak with them.
Lengthy program all night, consisting of commentary on this case. I would like the jurors specifically admonished not to watch that program.
Okay, and where and when will this show be?
Channel 4, I assume it's called Now with Tom Brokaw. I'm not sure of the time. I don't plan on watching it myself.
I bet. And
9 o'clock.
what's
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock? All right. Yeah, let me say the writer. What are you talking about?
Oh, Mr. Dunn. I understand it's being promoted as Inside the Minds of the Menendez Brothers, so I assume he's taken up brain surgery now as well as writing.
All right. Maybe he can get the last word on that one.
Oh, I'm sure he's already gotten the word on that
All
one.
right, let's get the gold jury, and I want to talk to them first, and then we'll have the blue jury in.
My name is Carlos Baralt, B-A-R-A-L-T.
Mr. Baralt, are you the uncle of Lyle and Eric Menendez?
Yes, I am.
And if you would look over your right shoulder, we have a family tree chart. And on the far right-hand side, it says Terry and Carlos. Is that you and your wife?
Yes, it is.
And the 4 names underneath are your 4 daughters?
Yes.
Is that correct? And I believe yesterday you saw Joan Vandermolen here. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And does her name appear on the Anderson?
Left-hand side.
Joan and Arnold?
Yes.
Is Arnold her husband?
That's correct.
And underneath it are Arnold, Karen, Kevin, Diane, and Kathy. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And are those her 5 children?
That's my understanding.
And the name next to Joan and Arnold, the next couple, is Milton and Joyce.
That's correct.
And Milton is Kitty Menendez's brother. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the next name is Brian and Pat. Brian is Kitty Menendez's brother also. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you see Pat Anderson here yesterday testify?
Yes, she was here.
Mr. Baralt, when did you first meet Jose Menendez?
At my girlfriend's, at that time, my girlfriend's home in Cuba, in Havana, Cuba.
And when was that?
That must have been 59. Yeah.
And your wife, Terry, is Jose Menendez's sister. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And from the time that you first met Jose Menendez, were you around him for most of your life?
Yes, I would think so. Absolutely.
You worked with him part of the time, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And you and your family lived very close to the Menendez family for a substantial period of time, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
During that period of time, did you have an opportunity to observe the parenting techniques of Kitty and Jose Menendez?
Yes.
And did you on occasion have conversations with Jose Menendez about some of his parenting skills? or
Once in a while.
techniques? And were those criticisms that you had?
Were things that I had observed that I felt that I would not do as a parent myself, and I felt that I should tell him about them.
And just generally, what type of behavior are we talking about? Are we talking about physical interaction, or are we talking about verbal interaction with his children?
Both.
Can you tell me the types of behavior that you were critical of, that you spoke to Jose about?
There was a situation where a physical situation between Lyle and Eric, where there was some educational choices that Jose had made that I felt were he wanted Lyle to go to Princeton. I felt that he should not.
Why did you feel he should not?
I felt that Princeton was not for Lyle, and he was pretty strong in his belief and a choice of Princeton for him.
Jose was pretty strong in his belief. Is that correct?
Yes, it was. Yes, he was.
Okay. And did you feel that academically this was not the right place for Lyle to go?
That's correct. Yeah.
Did you feel that the chances of his succeeding there were pretty minimal?
I felt he would not finish at Princeton. There was no way that he would finish at Princeton.
And did Jose indicate why Princeton was so important to him?
He felt that Princeton offered the background in life that would permit him to be very successful in terms of contacts and influences in general.
Was success very important to Jose?
Yes, it was very important.
And was it very important to him that his children succeed as well?
I think that it would be it was one of his most important things in his life, I'm sure.
And did he have attitudes about winning and the importance of winning that you were
That
critical
was
of?
another area that I've talked to him about, and at one point in time, we had a conversation on winning, and he said that winning was all important. And my observation to him was that I felt that trying was more important than winning. You should do the best you can. And he said, no, that's not the case. It's winning is the only thing that's important. And trying and coming in second best is not enough.
And did he pass this philosophy on to his children through his parenting techniques?
Not being an expert on the matter, I would think that that not only guided his teachings of the kids, but his own life. And so it would have been a role model for them.
And did you ever comment on the kind of pressure that this put on the children, that they were expected to win and nothing else was satisfactory?
Yes, I did. That was part of our conversation in that particular situation. That I essentially told him that that was the wrong thing to portray to his kids. That a kid could not be expected to do better than the best that he can do, even if it is not winning.
Did he accept that?
No, he did not.
Did he talk to you about, did he ever express to you his view of whether children should be raised to trust people?
Yes, he felt that on one occasion he said he illustrated something that he had done to one of his kids.
And was that kid Eric?
Yes, it was.
And how did he illustrate what he had done?
He was telling me that he was playing with Eric, and Eric was sort of like throwing himself off of a counter. And on one occasion,
I would move to strike this particular anecdote as being hearsay.
All right, this is what was related to the witness by Jose Menendez.
Yes.
A specific anecdote, which you would object as being hearsay.
It is not being received for the truth of the matter asserted, just to reflect the state of mind of Jose Menendez. You may proceed.
and one of the occasions in which Eric threw himself and he would catch him, he did not catch him.
Intentionally?
Intentionally. And I said, why did you do that? And he said, well, just that's to teach him a lesson that you can't trust anybody, not even your father.
And did you feel that there was a lot of pressure put on these children?
Objection and proper opinion.
Sustained.
Based on your observations of Jose Menendez as he interacted with his children and Kitty Menendez as she interacted with her children, were you able to hear conversations that indicated there was a lot of pressure put on these children? Pressure to succeed.
I would say on occasion, not always.
And these were the types of issues that you discussed with Mr. Menendez. Is that correct? With
Yes.
Jose Menendez? And did he seem to be receptive to your suggestions, or seem to think that they had some merit?
It was hard to say because Jose would accept your statement and then pretty much not argue with you.
And
He
then,
would just, say yes or no. Many times he would just say yes, and you knew that it was to end the conversation.
so the fact that he said yes didn't mean that he agreed with you necessarily,
That's correct.
and he would go on and do what he wanted to do.
Absolutely.
Did you, you indicated that one of the times that you spoke to him about his decision-making was about the decision for Lyle to go to Princeton when you thought that was inappropriate. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And was it your impression, particularly with regard to Lyle, that Jose was attempting to create a copy of himself to a degree?
Objection, proper speculation.
Sustained.
What was your opinion with regard to Jose Menendez's expectations for his son Lyle?
Objection, proper opinion.
Sustained.
Did Jose Menendez ever express to you what his goals were for Lyle,
Yes.
and what were they?
To have he said that Lyle should not have the problems in achieving the type of success that he had,
And
and that he was going to provide him with the opportunity to do so.
and what problems was he referring to specifically?
He felt that it had been harder for him to get to where he was because of the fact that he was not a graduate of a Ivy League school, and he saw other people who were graduates who were not as capable as he, that had it much easier than he had.
And did Jose Menendez seem to take an interest in what sports his sons played and how they played them?
Yes, he was very much interested, and he expressed to me that that they should choose one sport and excel at it, as opposed to participating in many sports and being relatively good at it.
Were sports for fun or for accomplishment?
The particular, I think the conversation essentially at that point, it was an accomplishment, a matter of accomplishment.
With regard to Mrs. Menendez, did she seem to have a different relationship with Lyle than she had with Eric?
Yes,
Did she seem to be closer to Eric than she was to Lyle?
yes,
Did she, in fact, openly express to you that she disliked Lyle?
in the latter parts of her life,
She actually said she disliked him.
yes.
After Kitty and Jose Menendez died, did you come out to California?
Yes, I did.
And were you and a number of other relatives in the Beverly Hills house?
Yes, I was.
And was there an effort to find a will?
That was the purpose for my being there, yes.
And was a will found?
Yes, there was a will found.
And was this an old will or a new will?
It was an old will dating to 1981.
And did you continue looking for another will even after finding the old will?
Yes, I did.
And did you go to several banks in an effort to look in safety deposit boxes to determine if there was a new will?
I believe we went to one bank.
And why was it that you thought that there was a new will?
Because I have had two conversations with Jose in which he had mentioned he was going to have a new will.
When
written up.
were those conversations?
The first one took place either late 1988 or early 1989. And the second one was in the early summer, June, July of 1989.
And did Jose Menendez indicate to you any specific changes he wanted to make in that new will?
Yes, he wanted to leave Lila and Eric off the will.
Did you express to him some concern about what their reaction would be when they found out that they had been taken out of the will?
I did express a concern about how he would tell them and what would happen.
And what did he say about that?
He said that he had already told them.
That they were out of the will?
Yes.
While you were in California during that trip, immediately after Kitty and Jose Menendez died, was there some information in a computer that was discovered, some reference to a will?
Yes, there was.
Now, were you among the group of people who initially found that reference? Or were you shown it sometime later?
Someone else found it. I came in after that.
And did you look at the information that was available in the computer with regard to a reference to a will?
Yes.
And could you determine by looking at it how much information was in the computer on that subject?
I only saw a directory with a listing of three or four files, and that was it.
And could you see the size of the file? Did it appear that there was anything in the will file?
No, it was a very small number of characters, and it could not have been much more than perhaps a name or 1 or 2 words, 3 words or something like that. It was not, certainly not a will.
And while you were still in California, were there discussions about this file marked will and the fact that there wasn't anything in it?
Yes,
And were there discussions about whether a will in a computer would be valid?
yes, there were.
And was Lyle present at these discussions?
At least a couple of times.
You're the executor of the estate, is that correct?
That's correct.
And if you had thought that there was some sort of valid will, or there was something in there that was actually going to have some legal significance, I assume you would have made arrangements to try to get that information. Is that correct?
Petition calls for speculation.
Overall.
I felt that whatever was there, I believed that would not be sustainable under a court of law as a valid will because it would not have been signed nor witnessed. However, I felt it would be of general interest.
And so were arrangements made sometime later for someone to come and look at the will, or at this entry in the computer?
Yes,
And to your knowledge, were there 2 relatives who evidently were both making arrangements to get this information?
that's correct.
And one was Carlos Menendez,
That's correct.
and another one was Eileen.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct? And is Eileen the second name under Marta and Peter? Marta being Jose Menendez's other sister?
Yes, it is.
And I understand we've spelled it wrong, but is that the right person?
That's the right person. I believe it's spelled right.
Oh, okay. When you were out here those first few days after Kitty and Jose died, I take it there were a number of people who were in the house. Is that correct? Number of relatives?
Initially in my first trip,
Yes.
yes, there were.
And was anybody keeping track of who was taking things or not taking things out of there, or were there just a lot of people in and out of the house?
The first couple of days, the only people there were, I guess, Lila and Eric, and then the family came in after that.
In the family, Joan and Pat and
Joan, yes, and Carlos Menendez and Brian and Maria. Several people came to the house, myself.
Were there 222 caliber rifles in the house?
I saw 2 rifles there, yes.
And were those rifles subsequently moved to your home in New Jersey?
Yes,
And did you recently sign authorization for those rifles to be brought back to Los Angeles by a police officer named Edgar Martinez?
I did sign such.
And did you turn those rifles over to him?
Yes, I did.
The boys were arrested in March of 1990, is that correct?
In my understanding, yes.
And at some point, did they let you know that they had in fact been responsible for the death of their parents?
Yes.
When was that?
That was in fall of 1990.
And did they indicate to you at that time that they had been molested?
Yes.
During the time that you were out here right after Kitty and Jose Menendez died, I believe Lyle and Eric were staying at the Bel Air Hotel. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And do you remember meeting a man named Dr. Oziel at that time?
I met him, yes.
And was he hanging around the hotel for the period of time?
It's exact.
Objection to the form of the question being argumentative.
Sustain the answer straight.
What was he doing?
He was sort of around.
And did he make some suggestions to you with regard to the estate?
He mentioned that he knew a lawyer could be good at handling probate matters.
So did he seem to be trying to help out with regard to the estate and the resolution of matters?
Objection clause for conclusion on item number.
Sustained.
In addition to just saying he knew a lawyer, did he actually refer you to a lawyer, a probate lawyer?
We went to see a lawyer, I believe, with Mr. Oziel and Lyle Menendez and myself.
Now, was this lawyer someone you knew or someone that Dr. Oziel knew?
No, I had never seen him.
Did Lyle seem to know him, or
I
where did the name
don't.
come from? Was this Dr.
I'm not
Oziel?
sure. I'm not sure. It could have been either Lyle or Eric, Lyle or Mr. Oziel. But I believe it was Oziel, but I'm not sure.
So you went to see this probate lawyer, is that correct?
This lawyer.
Do you remember his name at this time?
Objection irrelevant.
Overall.
No, I don't.
Do you remember where he was located?
I believe it was somewhere north of Beverly Hills, but I'm not sure.
And did you hire him?
No.
Why not?
Objection irrelevant. May we approach?
All right, sure. All right, you may proceed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Baralt, you indicated you did not hire this lawyer, is that correct?
That is correct.
And why was that?
I didn't like him.
Why?
I don't know. I had a feeling that he was not the type of lawyer that I would want to have on my team as a probate, part of the probate.
Why?
Okay, I think you've covered it.
I have no other questions. I would just like to have him identify. Could we mark as next in order the
Sure.
release of the rifles?
All right, Exhibit 317?
May I approach?
Yes.
Mr. Baralt, I'm showing you what we've marked now as 317. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
That's a authorization for Officer Martinez, Jersey City Police, to transport 2 rifles to California.
And those are the rifles that have been in the home of Jose and Kitty Menendez.
I believe so.
Okay, and is that your signature?
That is my signature.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right, any examination on behalf of Eric Menendez? All right, cross-examination?
Good morning, Mr. Baralt.
Good morning.
Did you know Jose Menendez, or were you in contact with Jose Menendez when he met his wife Kitty?
During all of that time, I was in contact, not that precise day.
No, but you knew him around the time that they were dating before they got married.
I believe he was staying with my parents.
All right. And then at some point after that, they got married. And during the, I believe there were 28 years that you knew Jose Menendez. And of those 14 years, you lived very close to him. Is that correct?
About 30 years I knew him, and I
At least
was
half.
close to him very close to him about half of that time.
And by very close, you mean in terms of distance?
Within 10 or 15 minute drive.
And during the period of time that you were not within 10 or 15 minutes of him, did you still maintain contact with he and his family?
Very often.
Would you describe his personality, please? And let me ask you this. Did his personality change over time from the time you met him in Cuba in 1959 until his death in 1989?
Oh, I'm sure it did. I met him when he was 15 and knew him throughout, his life.
Did he leave Cuba because of Castro?
That's my understanding.
Is that why you left Cuba?
Yes, it is.
And what was his personality like during the years that you knew him?
He was a jovial individual, very charming, very extremely talented, very intelligent. Great guy to be with, and great guy to be on his side of the team.
And if you weren't on his side of the team, how did he behave?
You don't want to be on the other side of the team from Jose.
Were you on his side of the team?
Yes,
Did you like Jose Menendez?
very much.
Did Jose Menendez do anything nice for you in terms of your career?
I'd like to think that I did something nice for him, but
All right. Well, what was your relationship with Jose Menendez in regards to your careers?
at one point in time, he was a president of a firm in Chicago, and he hired me as a vice president of finance and administration for that firm.
And when you say you like to think you did something nice for him, was that in regards to your performance when you worked at the firm?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then when the family was relocated in New Jersey, you continued to be in close contact with the Menendez family. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you describe Kitty Menendez, please? Could you describe her personality?
Kitty was also a very charming, fun person to be around. She's very active, very energetic, extremely energetic person.
Did you notice any change in her over the years? That is, let's say from 1985 to 1989.
Yes.
And could you describe the changes that you saw in her personality during those last 4 years?
She was, I think, frustrated is the biggest, or the single word that I think would describe most her personality changes. I don't think she knew how to cope with all the things that were around her.
All right. Were you in contact with the Menendez family after they moved to California?
Yes.
And what was the nature of your contact?
They would visit us in New Jersey quite frequently, one or the other or both of them.
Did you ever see any signs that Jose Menendez loved his sons?
Absolutely.
And what signs were those, sir?
His life pretty much was devoted to trying to educate their kids in the fashion that they thought was the best fashion possible.
And I take it that you found some fault with some of these educational processes that Mr. Menendez engaged in.
Yes, I did.
But did it appear to you that he wanted the best for his sons?
Absolutely.
What about Mrs. Menendez? Did she appear to love her sons?
Yes, most of the time.
All right. Did she, on some occasions, did she appear to be frustrated or unhappy with her children?
Yes.
And could you, was that something that happened constantly throughout her life, or was it more pronounced at certain times than others?
More pronounced in the last 4 years of her life.
Did you ever see Mrs. Menendez hug or touch her sons?
Excuse me?
Did you ever see Mrs. Menendez hug or touch her sons in an affectionate way?
No, I don't think so.
How about Mr. Menendez?
No.
Now, when you say that they loved their children, how can you say that if you didn't see any physical signs?
Well, when you come from work and all you're thinking is about your kids' tennis instruction, or choosing the right tennis coach, or spending time pitching balls in the tennis court to them, and to the exclusion of any other hobby or activity, I would think that would demonstrate that.
Did Jose Menendez appear to have any hobbies outside of his business that did not involve his sons? In other words, playing squash or stamp collecting or something like that?
No.
Okay, so I believe you indicated he was successful. Is that correct?
That he was successful? Yes.
A successful businessman.
Yes, he was.
Did he appear to devote a large number of hours to his business?
Yes, he did.
In addition to that, he also devoted large numbers of hours to his children. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, you were raised in Cuba. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it traditional in a Cuban family for the father to be the head of the household, or is the mother the head of the household?
I would say that's the general case, the father being the head of the household.
And did Jose Menendez appear to be the head of the household?
Yes, he did.
During the period of time that you lived close to the Menendez family, did you ever see Jose Menendez exhibit any sexual interest in either of his sons?
No, ma'am.
Did you see any signs of any kind of sexual molestation occurring between Jose Menendez and his sons?
No, ma'am.
Objection, Your Honor, the witness has no expertise to notice those signs.
Objection overruled. The answer will stand.
Now, how would you describe Lyle Menendez's relationship with his mother from, let's say, the age of 15 on, if you know? Well, let me ask you this. Were you able to observe Lyle Menendez interact with his mother from the ages of 15 until 21?
Yes, on occasion.
And on those occasions, did you ever see them have any arguments or disputes?
Yes,
And during those occasions, did you ever see Lyle Menendez talk back to his mother?
yes.
And what was her response when he talked back to her?
Her response?
Yes, what was her response?
I guess a limited response.
What do you mean by that, sir? What is a limited response?
Like, she wouldn't say anything.
She wouldn't respond.
She would, like, clench her, she just,
Would she clench her fist?
yeah, something like that.
Okay. Did you ever see her hit Lyle Menendez from his age 15 to 21?
No,
Did you ever see her in a state where she appeared to be very physically frustrated in Lyle Menendez's presence? Do you understand my question?
I understand your question. I wonder whether, I've seen her, but I don't know whether Lyle was there or not.
Well, you indicated that at times she would clench her fist when she was frustrated with her son Lyle, correct?
Yes.
And during those periods of time, did you ever see her strike out at him?
No,
Did you ever see Lyle Menendez treat his mother with respect during those years from age 15 to 21?
no. What do you mean? But
Well, I think I phrased it incorrectly. Did you see him ever treat her with disrespect during that age period of Lyle Menendez's?
Yes,
Now, I believe you indicated that that it was your opinion that Mrs. Menendez was closer to Eric Menendez than to Lyle.
yes.
And how did you make that determination?
In part, she said it. She said that.
But that was later on, correct?
In terms of saying it, yes.
All right. So before she actually said that she liked Eric better than Lyle, did you have the?
Objection that mistakes we can say.
Sustain. Rephrase.
I'm sorry. You said she said something which led you to the opinion that she liked Eric better than Lyle.
Yes.
Okay. I may have misquoted you. What was it she said? Was she said that she didn't like Lyle?
And, she says, I can't believe I don't like my own son.
And about what age was Lyle Menendez when she said that?
This was very shortly before their deaths.
Okay. And where was this comment made? What was it in California? Was it in New Jersey?
This was around my dinette table in the kitchen.
Do you remember what month that was that she made the comment?
It had to be sometime in the spring of '89, or maybe even summer of '89. I'm not sure.
Was it during
'89?
Was it during a period of time when Lyle Menendez was still at Princeton University for that semester?
He may have gone back to California. I'm not sure.
All right. So sometime in the spring of 1989.
Yeah.
And Lyle Menendez was not present when she said that to you?
No, he was not.
What was her demeanor when she made this comment about, I can't believe it, but I don't like my own son? Was she upset? Was she laughing? Was she, if you know?
No, she was sad.
She was sad?
Yeah.
Now, before you had this particular conversation with Mrs. Menendez, during the years that Lyle Menendez and his brother Eric were younger, did you ever get the impression that Mrs. Menendez favored Eric Menendez over his brother Lyle?
Objection, on cause for speculation.
Sustain.
Did you ever see anything that indicated to you in terms of Mrs. Menendez's behavior that showed a favoritism towards Eric over Lyle?
I don't think it could be characterized as favoritism, no.
Okay. I believe you indicated in your direct examination that Kitty Menendez was closer to Eric.
I believe so.
Okay, and why do you make that statement? What's that based on?
Because I think she felt a little sorry for Eric.
Did she ever indicate to you that she felt sorry for him?
I don't know through words or actions, but there was such an indication, yes.
All right, when you say she felt sorry for him, would she display that in any particular way to your knowledge?
It would be more a type of as a reaction perhaps to Jose's preference of Lyle.
And when you say it was a reaction on her part to her husband's preference for Lyle, what kind of reactions did you observe that led you to believe that she felt sorry for Eric?
I think it was more the protective type of reaction.
Okay, did you ever see her act protectively towards Eric Menendez, her son?
Yes, I did.
And could you describe the kind of occasion in which you viewed this conduct?
That was primarily when Lyle and Eric would be fighting, and for one reason or another, and Lyle and Eric would start crying or something like that, and she would react to that and say, "Stop this." Or
Okay, and when you say she would react to it, would she appear to be upset by the fighting between her two sons?
yes,
And when you say she would react, what would she do, if anything, aside from stop the fight?
that would be it.
Okay, would she ever talk to Eric after these fights?
No, not too much. That didn't stick in my mind.
Did you feel that Jose Menendez was abusive towards his sons?
Objection on calls for a conclusion by the witness.
Abusive towards her son,
Yeah, Mr. Menendez. I'm talking.
Mr. Menendez.
Yeah, did you feel that Mr. Menendez was abusive towards his children?
That's a hard question to answer because I'm not sure what the exact definition of the term abusive is.
All right, well then, let me ask you this. When, on the occasions when you talked to Jose Menendez about his parenting, okay,
Yes.
you've related some of those in your direct examination. Did you ever feel that his parenting was abusive? And can you answer that question?
Again, we're going back to the term abusive. I'm not sure what you refer to as abusive is.
Okay, did you ever feel it necessary to call the police and say there's something bad going on in this house?
No, not at all.
Did you ever discuss it with your mother-in-law, Maria Menendez, or your father-in-law?
The behavior that I felt was inadequate.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yes. Sure.
Was it something that was discussed within the family?
Yeah. At least with my wife and our own immediate family. Sure.
Well, when you say your wife and your immediate family, are you referring to your daughters, or are you referring to your in-laws, or? What do
Primarily my daughters.
All right, so in terms of it being a family problem or something that you considered a family problem, you discussed it with your wife, Terry, and perhaps your daughters.
Sure. Mhm.
But as far as going outside of your immediate family with these concerns, did you ever do that?
No.
Now, when you would tell Mr. Menendez your assessment of his poor parenting, did he ever get angry with you?
No.
Did he ever strike you?
Oh, no.
Did you ever see him strike his children?
No.
Did you ever see Mrs. Menendez at any time strike her children?
No.
Did you ever see Mrs. Menendez at any time lose her temper with her children?
Yes.
And what would she do to demonstrate that she'd lost her temper?
She'd do like,
Okay, would she clench her fist and grit her teeth?
Yeah.
And during those times that she was clenching her fist and gritting her teeth, did you ever see her strike any other human being in her vicinity?
Maybe her husband.
Did you actually see her strike her husband?
A number of times.
All right, did you ever see him strike her?
No.
And when she struck him, would she strike him in such a way as to do injury, or was it a kind of frustrated hit, or could you describe the kind of striking that you saw?
Oh, she really hit him.
All right, did she?
In the arm, as hard as she could.
So she'd punch him in the arm.
Yeah.
Now he was a big guy, wasn't
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
he? He was about 6'1", correct?
About 6 feet. Yeah.
And well built,
Very well built.
strong.
Yes.
Okay. Did he appear to be injured when his wife would strike him on the arm?
No, he'd go like that.
Okay, so he'd
Covers
sort of
him.
fend off the blow.
Right.
Did he appear to take these strikes seriously? In other words, would he strike back or yell at her or anything like that?
No.
Did he ever laugh at her when she did that?
Yes.
All right. So she would get frustrated, hit him, and he'd laugh at her.
Well, she just took it. girlfriend is, I think that's as much as she could do is hit him hard. But not to, I don't think it was to damage him, but just out of frustration.
She was frustrated.
Yeah.
Did you notice, what was the relationship like between Jose Menendez and his wife during the period of time that the defendants were children? How did they interact with each other?
They seemed like a normal family unit. Remember we were there, so I don't know what went on in between themselves when they were alone. But when we were there, it was just a regular family unit. We'd play bridge, we'd do things as families, would go on vacation.
And aside from the instances when you talked to Jose Menendez about the pressure he was putting on his sons and his attitudes towards winning, did you see any behavior in the Menendez family that you considered to be normal?
Normal?
Yeah, did they act normal ever?
I would say most of the time.
Okay, they went on family vacations.
Sure.
Did you have family gatherings where the kids would go eat outside and the parents would stay inside and the kids would play? And
All the time.
okay, what other kinds of activities did you engage in with the Menendezes when their children were young?
Well, we'd get together with them quite frequently. And one of the things when they were young, one of the things that Terry and I would do was go over and play bridge with them. And so we'd see them just about every weekend. We'd go out for dinner. We'd get both families together and just play around, watch TV, whatever.
Did you take your 4 daughters into the Menendez home?
Yes.
And did you allow them to play in the Menendez home?
Well, when they were children, there were only 3, but yes.
All right. So your children played with the defendants when they were children, correct?
Yes.
Did you see any change in the relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Menendez, let's say, shortly before they moved to California and after they got to California?
There was I think there was some tension because of the move. I don't think Kitty wanted to go to California, and Jose had a new job in California. So there was tension there, and there was some further changes later on.
Did you know, prior to their deaths, did you know about the affair that Mr. Menendez had?
No,
So that was something you learned afterwards, is that correct?
that is correct.
Now, I believe you indicated that you had some criticisms of Jose Menendez and the way he was raising his sons. I take it you don't know how sports champions are created, is that correct? Would that be fair to say? Do you understand my question?
I think I do, but you better explain a little
Well, I'm
bit more.
talking about Olympic athletes. Do you know what kind of training and work goes into the creation of an Olympic athlete?
I have a daughter who was extremely excelled quite a bit in a sport,
And what sport was that?
swimming.
All right. And did you participate in her activities?
Very much so.
And did your wife participate in her activities?
Much more than I did.
Okay. Was there a lot of parental involvement in your daughter's swimming career?
Tremendous amount.
And in order to become an excellent swimmer, did she sometimes have to make sacrifices in the other aspects of her life?
Of course.
Did she have to sometimes sacrifice having friends?
Well, she had to practice every day for a number of hours in the afternoon after school.
Okay. And did you ever see that her grades ever suffered somewhat because of her participation in sports?
And quite the contrary. That's just an opinion, though.
But you think her grades were very good?
Yes,
All right. Is your daughter bright?
I think so.
Well, she is your daughter, right?
That's right.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this about Princeton University. I believe you indicated that you told Mr. Menendez that you didn't feel Princeton University was the appropriate place for Lyle Menendez. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that was based upon your own observations of Lyle Menendez, correct?
Yes.
Do you know people who go to Princeton University?
No. Well, yes and no. Lyle and his friends all came over to my house quite frequently.
Prior to forming the opinion that Princeton University was not the appropriate place for Lyle, had you been acquainted with anyone who had attended or graduated from Princeton University?
I understand several of the governors in the eastern states and several of our presidents have gone to Princeton. Yes,
So your opinion of Princeton University was based upon its reputation, is that correct?
and that's correct.
Now, you've lived in the East Coast most of your adult life, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Isn't it true that in the East Coast, going to an Ivy League school is fairly important in business circles?
Your Honor, I would object on relevancy grounds.
Sustained.
Is going to an Ivy League college something that people are proud of in the East Coast?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Did you consider it abnormal for Jose Menendez to want his son to go to an Ivy League school?
No,
And is going to a good college something that a parent would want their child to do, in your opinion?
in my opinion, yes.
Did you ever see any interaction between Lyle Menendez and his mother when he was over the age of 15 in regards to girlfriends of Lyle Menendez's?
Interaction between them, I was not a witness to any.
All right. Now, I believe you indicated that after Jose and Kitty Menendez were killed, that you came to California, correct?
Yes,
You arrived here on, what, Monday evening or Tuesday of that week?
Monday.
Okay, did you participate in searching for the wills from 1981?
Yes,
And did you find them?
we did.
When you say we, who's we?
Somebody found it. I believe it was Carlos Menendez.
Do you know where you were physically located when you were informed that the wills had been found?
I was at the Bel Air, I believe, with Lyle.
And do you know where the wills were found?
Yes, and I was told that they were found where they were found
And where was that?
in a box in Kitty's closet.
All right, so the wills in which the defendants were to inherit their parents' estate were found inside the Menendez home, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you remember specifically that you were at the Hotel Bel Air when you discovered this information?
Yes,
Do you know what day of the week it was?
it was either Wednesday or Thursday. I'm not sure.
Did you discuss the fact of these wills with either Lyle or Eric Menendez after they were discovered?
Yeah, well, Lyle was with me.
All right, and did you say something to him like they found the wills?
Yeah, we went there to take a look at it and read it, and we both went out there to
Oh,
the
okay.
house.
All right, so after you were informed by Carlos Menendez, you and Lyle Menendez returned to the family home, is that correct?
Right.
And prior to this will being discovered, did you have any knowledge of the contents of the will? In other words, do you know, were you present when it was made in 1981?
Yes.
Okay, so in 1981, were you a witness?
Well, no, I was not a witness. I was not in the house, but I knew I was named executor on it.
Did you consent to be the executor of the estate?
Yes.
So before the 1981 will was discovered in 1989, you were aware of the fact that you'd been asked to and had consented to be the executor of the Menendez estate.
That's correct.
And I take it either Mr. or Mrs. Menendez had asked you to do that.
That's correct.
And in asking you to be the executor, did they advise you of the contents of their will?
No, not the details.
Were you ever led to believe who the beneficiaries would be of that will?
Yes.
And was that done prior to Mr. and Mrs. Menendez's deaths?
Yes.
And who did you understand the beneficiaries to be?
Of that will,
Yes.
Eric and Lyle.
Okay.
Lyle and Eric.
Now, after you returned to the house with Lyle Menendez when the will had been discovered, did you have any discussion about the will with Lyle Menendez?
I'm sure I did, but I don't really recall. Any specifics.
When you and Lyle Menendez were going over to the Beverly Hills house, did you say to him, hey, they found the wills, let's go over and look at them? Or did you advise him of the purpose of the trip?
Oh, to the well, yeah, sure. Someone got a call. I forget whether it was me or Lyle. Someone's got a call at the Bel Air and said the will had been found, and would you come over and we both got into a car and went over to see the will,
Okay. During that period of time then, did you advise Lyle Menendez, or did it appear to you that he understood the purpose of your trip back to the Beverly Hills house? That is,
Well,
you were going back to look at the will.
That would be my belief, yeah.
Did he ever say to you during that trip, well, I've been disinherited?
No.
Did he ever express to you any belief that he had in fact been disinherited?
No.
Did he ever tell you that his father had indicated to him that he was going to disinherit him?
No, not at that.
Pardon me?
Not at that point.
At some point, did he make such a statement to you?
I believe later on he did, yes. But
Okay.
I don't recall exactly when.
When you say later on, was that that was after the will had been found, though?
Right.
And were you in California or New Jersey when Lyle made this statement to you about, if you recall?
No, I don't recall.
Can you remember the content of the conversation you had with Lyle Menendez about his belief as to whether or not he was in the will?
No, I can't. I can't really testify to that. I really don't know. I know that it was at some point in time it came up, but I don't know when it was. I just don't know.
But when this particular subject that may have dealt with disinheritance came up, it was after you and Lyle Menendez had gone to the house and looked at the will, correct?
Yeah.
And when you went to the house, did you actually physically look at this will?
Yes.
And was that, in fact, the terms of that will, were they the same as your understanding of what the will was to be?
One through present.
Okay. When you actually saw the will at the Menendez home on Wednesday or Thursday, which would have been the 23rd or 24th of August, did the provisions of the will look familiar to you?
I didn't know what to expect, so I couldn't. It was not an expectation of both Eric and Lyle were named as the inheritors. There were some clauses in terms of ages for inheriting, and which I did not expect. I didn't know what the ages would be.
But in terms of the fact that Lyle and Eric Menendez were the beneficiaries, that came as no surprise. Would that be correct?
No, that came as no surprise.
Do you know where Eric Menendez was when you went back to the house on that date?
No, I don't.
I believe that you indicated that you were present when there was a search in a computer to look for any subsequent wills.
When there was
A search in the family
Oh.
computer.
there was a search, and somebody brought the directory up for me to look at, which I looked at. I tried to print something out, and nothing happened.
Okay, at the time in 1989 when you were doing this search, how would you rate your computer skills? Beginner, medium, advanced?
Somewhere between beginner and intermediate. I was accustomed to an Apple computer, but I had just acquired an IBM recently, so I was really not that familiar with the IBM.
And the computer that you searched was the IBM type computer that was in the Menendez master bedroom, correct?
Yes, it was, right.
Was there any search done at the Apple computer which was in the study?
I don't remember, no. Not by me, let me put it that way.
I believe you indicated that on some occasion before his death, at least 2 occasions, that Jose Menendez indicated to you that he was going to make a new will. Is that correct?
Yes.
And he indicated to you well, let me ask you this, on both occasions that he was going to disinherit his sons?
No, on the second occasion only.
Okay, so the first occasion was late 88 or early 89, and he merely indicated that he was going to make some changes.
Right.
And did he say anything more specific than that?
No.
And then I believe you indicated in the summer of 1989, Jose Menendez told you that he wanted to take his sons out of the will.
That's correct.
Where were you physically located when he told you this?
In a limousine
And do you know what state you were in?
in New Jersey.
Was he visiting?
He was in the East Coast on business, and I believe we were traveling between New York and our home in New Jersey.
And do you remember what month it was that he indicated to you that he wanted to take his sons out of the will?
It's either June or July. I can't.
You can't be more specific.
No.
Did he indicate to you why he wanted to take his sons out of the will?
Essentially because he felt that that he was very frustrated and disappointed with his kids, and he just didn't feel that he could justify having them as in the will itself.
When he told you that he was frustrated and disappointed with his children, what was his demeanor like? Was he relaxed? Was he upset? Was he confident? How did he behave?
He was collected, cool and collected, I would say. I mean, there was no big emotion at that point. It was just something that gave the impression that something that he had to do. He was going to do it.
Mr. Baralt, did Jose Menendez tell you why he was frustrated and disappointed with his children?
I think he was just, we had many conversations before with regards to some of the things that had been going on with the kids, and especially with Lyle.
And when you say you'd had many conversations with him, during what period of time are you referring to? Are you referring to the conversations where you had told him you didn't like his parenting, or are these different kinds of
No,
conversations?
These are conversations in during the early part of the first half or the summer of 1989.
So that was the last summer of his life.
Well, and the previous 6 months or 7 months.
Now, you were aware of the fact that of Lyle Menendez's difficulties at Princeton University, correct?
That's correct.
And during the first half of 1989, Lyle Menendez had returned to Princeton University, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was it during this period of time that some of the conversations you had with Mr. Menendez occurred?
Yes.
And what did he tell you about his disappointment with Lyle Menendez during the first half of 1989?
Well, we had several conversations. One was with regards to finishing, for instance, the schooling at Princeton, and his frustration because he said, I went to school and and I had to work full time at the same time as I was going to school, and all I'm asking Lyle is to pass. And he's having all kinds of problems in passing and getting through school. And there were other conversations with regards to cheating, and there was some flags that disappeared that we had talked to him about.
What do you mean flags that disappeared?
There were some flags from the eating clubs that had been taken, and they showed up in our house, and we told Lyle, you got to take them back.
When you say eating clubs, Princeton University has clubs where people go to eat their daily meals, correct?
That's correct.
And the clubs have different names.
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Okay. And so you indicated that some flags that were from eating clubs showed up at your home?
Yes.
And did you make Mr. Menendez aware of this fact?
Mr. Menendez made us aware of the fact that the flags had been brought over.
All right. Did you actually see these flags in your house?
Oh, yes.
All right. And did you confront Lyle Menendez about them?
Sure.
And did he take responsibility for it?
Yes.
And were some efforts made to return the flags?
Yes, I told him he had to take them back.
Okay. And did it appear that he did so?
It appeared that way. At least they disappeared from our house.
Okay. Now, so Mr. Menendez was concerned about that fact. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you remember what month it was that the flags from the eating clubs disappeared?
No, it was early that year, 1989.
Early in the semester?
I believe so.
Okay. Did Mr. Menendez ever indicate to you any disappointment he had about his son, Eric?
No, he told me he was disappointed in Eric as well.
Did he ever indicate to you why he was disappointed in Eric?
Not precisely.
Did he give you imprecise reasons for being upset with Eric?
Well, he mentioned about the problems with the gangs.
To take care of things. And we'll resume at 11:30. Don't discuss the matter with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We'll see you all back here at 11:30.
Jose Menendez mentioned to you that caused him concern about Eric Menendez and the discussion you had about disinheriting Eric and Lyle Menendez.
well, both he and Lyle, there had been stories about some problems that he had had in with gangs.
Okay, are you talking about Lyle or Eric?
I'm talking about Eric.
And what information did Mr. Menendez impart to you about Eric's involvement with gangs?
That I think he had punched somebody, and that there were members of the gang that were after him. Some of the fellow that he had punched.
Was it your understanding that Eric Menendez belonged to the gang, or that his involvement with the gang was for some other reason?
Oh no, he was not involved. As far as I know, he was not involved with a gang. There was some sort of a gang of a fellow that he had punched that was after him.
Was it your understanding he got in a fight with a member of the gang or some members of the gang?
Yes.
And you specifically recall that before his death, Mr. Menendez talked to you about this?
No, because not at that time. That was previous conversations that we have had.
All right,
We
so-
had had.
But before Mr. Menendez died, you did know about the gang, the fight that Eric Menendez had been in with the gang.
You got to understand, I knew very, very little about it because he would I would get like little dropper, and I'd suddenly find something about a fight off of the tennis court at Calabasas.
Okay.
Yeah, and then a little while later, I said, they're very much afraid that a gang might come over, and he said that he would mention that in connection to his move to Beverly Hills, things like that. So there wasn't a story told to me about it.
So there were bits and pieces of information related to you by Mr. Menendez and you pieced it together.
Right.
But in terms of his dissatisfaction with Eric, in the 6 months prior to his death, Jose Menendez indicate to you specific things that he was dissatisfied about with Eric?
We talked about tennis with him. I told him that Eric was very good on tennis, and he said no, he's not really half as talented as Lyle in tennis. He was disappointed with Eric in that respect.
Were there any other specific topics that he mentioned in regards to being disappointed in Eric for purposes of disinheritance that you can recall?
No, not really. Other than Eric was like secondary to. It was just sort of like if he disinherits Lyle, then obviously you have to disinherit Eric.
All right, so the main thrust of the dissatisfaction leading to the disinheritance was Lyle. Would that be fair to say?
In my mind, I don't think he ever expressed that. That's what I felt.
Okay. And you already related to the jury the reasons he told you he was dissatisfied with Lyle.
Right.
Were there any other reasons that you haven't mentioned to the jury that Mr. Menendez expressed to you about his dissatisfaction with Lyle?
No, we didn't get into it at that conversation.
One more question. Did he tell you that he had already disinherited them or that he was going to?
Oh, no. He was going to write a will. No, there was no question about that.
But was it your impression that this new will had already been written
No, it had not been written yet.
and this was in the summer of 1989?
I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further inquiry on this subject?
Just briefly, if I may. Was your impression he was going to write a will?
All right, let's not go into that because it's really beyond what we're here for. The only issue had to do with any information the witness had from Jose Menendez relating to complaints about the two defendants.
Okay, Your Honor, we have one request. This matter about this gang thing is not cleared up by the prosecution now. I want permission to examine the witness further.
Certainly. Yeah. All right, anything else now before we have the jury come out?
Mr. Cram wants to ask a question. Did Jose Menendez ever indicate to you that he was upset because either one of the sons was involved in burglaries?
No, I found out about later, much after they were dead.
Thank you.
All right, how much longer do you think your examination will be?
I can't. Less than half an hour, less than 15 minutes, perhaps. I just don't know.
All right, well, let's have the juries come in just for until noon at least. So we'll proceed with the juries at this time.
period of time that she made the first comment to you at your dining table? Or was it a different trip?
That would be the typical meeting place, would be the dinette table.
Okay.
And whenever she came over, that's where we would meet.
All right, and when she made when she made the second statement that you've just related to us, where she lumped both of the defendants together, was that during the same period of time as the first one, or was that on a separate and later occasion?
No, this is all in the last year.
All right, and how soon before her death was it, would you estimate that she made that statement to you?
I don't know, between 1 month and 6 months or 8 months before.
Now, I believe right before the break, I was asking you if Mr. Menendez expressed to you specifically why he was unhappy with his son Eric, and you made some reference to an incident involving a gang. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Was it your understanding that Eric Menendez had been involved in a fight where he had been attacked by a gang?
Yeah, there was such a statement
And was it your understanding that he fought back?
that he punched a guy. Yeah, right.
And did Mr. Menendez express some concern over this particular event?
That it seemed that they were afraid that the gang members where this kid that he punched belonged to would get back to them, and who knows what.
Okay, he didn't indicate to you that he thought Eric Menendez was in a gang?
No.
Okay. Now, when he indicated to you that he had plans or expressed a desire to change his will, was it your impression that he'd already done this, or he was intending to do it?
He was intending to change the will.
And after that particular conversation, did you have any indication that he had in fact changed his will?
No.
Were there any further discussions with either Mr. or Mrs. Menendez after this conversation in which a will was discussed?
I don't believe so.
Now, after you came to California on Monday, August the 21st, after you learned of the deaths of your brother-in-law and sister-in-law, how many times during that week before you went back to New Jersey were you in the company of Eric and Lyle Menendez?
In the company of Lyle, I believe I saw him on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I think we left on Friday. In the company of Eric, I believe it was Wednesday and Thursday.
Now, did you go to the memorial service here in California?
Yes, I did.
And at that service, did one of the two defendants speak?
Yes.
And do you remember which one spoke?
I believe it was Eric.
Do you remember the subject matter of his comments at his parents' memorial service?
Yes, I do.
All right, what did he talk about?
He talked about his parents.
And when he did so, did he cry?
I believe so.
Was he able to finish? Did it appear that he was able to finish his comments?
I don't recall.
Do you remember the kinds of things he said about his parents at the memorial service on Friday, the 25th?
There were nice things. Very nice things.
All right. Now, during the week that you were in California, did you go back on Friday or Saturday, if you recall?
I think I went back on Friday. I might be wrong, but I believe it was Friday.
After the service?
Yes.
During that period of time, did you have any financial discussions with either of the defendants?
I believe I had one meeting, and I'm not sure who was there. I think it could have been Lyle alone or both Lyle and Eric, in which we discussed, oh, wait a minute. We also had a meeting, I believe, with Live Entertainment, but I'm not sure who was there either. I know Marta was there.
All right. Do you remember when the meeting with Live Entertainment was?
It was right after the services.
All right. So that would have been on Friday.
Was that Friday? Okay.
Well, I can't testify.
I don't remember. It was Thursday or Friday,
But
whenever the services were.
later in the week, correct?
No, right after the services.
Okay, but the services were later in the week. right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And at the meeting with live entertainment, were there financial matters discussed in the presence of the family members?
I know Marta and I were there.
Do you know if either of the defendants were there?
I'm not sure. I can't recall. I know that I'm sure we discussed the subject matter with at least Lyle before or at the meeting. But I don't know whether he was there or not.
Was the subject of a $5 million life insurance policy?
I'm going to object at this point. This is beyond the scope of the hearing. And it's calling for hearsay.
All right, this is the meeting that,
At live entertainment.
the objection is overruled, but it's a little afternoon, so we'll take our recess and we'll resume at 1:30. Or 2 o'clock. I think there's a juror who has to be somewhere and requests that we resume at 2 o'clock. So don't discuss this matter with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We'll see everybody back here at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. The jury panels haven't arrived yet, but I'd ask that the bailiffs let me know if there are any jurors waiting in the hallway so we can get them in and count up all our jurors so we can start as soon as they arrive. While waiting for the jurors to arrive, we can discuss some matters relating to proposed testimony of other witnesses. The defense has indicated certain witnesses they intend to call or want to call, and I have been provided with interview sheets or reports of interviews of these witnesses prepared by the defense. And those reports have been highlighted to indicate those things that the defense wished to bring out in the testimony of the witness or witnesses. I have 2 sheets in front of me at this time, and I believe there's a third that you're still working on.
Yes, Your Honor. As to Mr. Smith, we have no objection to him testifying generically, but I still don't know what particular things they want to bring out from his testimony. But as to Mr. Willis, our objection would be that his dealings with Mr. Menendez appear to have been principally in Chicago in about 1976, and that they are too remote and are basically repetitive of what Mr. Smith would say.
All right, I had assumed that you have been provided with a copy of the report identical to mine, which would indicate those things the defense wished to bring out. So,
No, unfortunately, I was not.
all right, well, I'm not going to pursue it then. At this point, I'll let you make copies of this then and give it to the prosecution. I don't see any reason to waste time on it now.
Well, I can Xerox that.
Well, either way,
Show.
yeah,
It's highlighted.
whichever way you want to do it. So we'll take a break, and as soon as the jurors come in, we'll.
Your Honor, perhaps we could proceed with the Cox Emery Somerville discussion, because there are not reports to be highlighted, and I think that everybody's familiar with the content.
Okay, we can do that, sure.
With regard to Dr. Emery, it would be our intention to call him to establish the period of time during which he treated Ms. Menendez and the medication that he was dispensing for her.
Just to testify to dates of treatment and the medication.
Yeah, and the purpose for giving her that it was for depression, and he did not know the underlying cause. I mean, there's no information in terms of that sheet. We was to give him the reason for the depression, but that it was a severe depression and anxiety, and what medication he prescribed her, and an indication of what that amount represented. So a mild or moderate or substantial dosage. So that's Dr. Emery's testimony. I suspect it's 10 minutes.
Right.
I believe that my objection to that was that it was remote. The information was too remote. It's already in evidence that she was taking different kinds of antidepressants. I don't see the necessity of coming in with the exact.
It seems to me that you can really probably work out a stipulation on this subject. Just dates of treatment, diagnosis of depression, and type of medication prescribed.
I also wonder if that she would not reveal to him what the problem was. She was extremely secretive about that.
And we would object to that particular fact. Because I think that the defense is going to try to draw the inference that she knew her sons were being molested, and that's what she was being secretive about. So it's too speculative and would cause confusion under 352.
It's our position that it's corroborative of what other people have indicated was a very secretive woman. And obviously our position is that these families are very secretive, families in which abuse is ongoing. and that this is a woman who is getting medication from a psychiatrist for depression and will not even talk about what she's willing to talk to other treating therapists about, which is the affair, let alone reveal anything more substantial.
Right. And the next witness?
Dr. Cox, who is the first of the California treating therapists. And he saw her a total of 18 times. And our purpose for that would be to indicate what the problems were that she indicated were existing at the time, which is corroborative of what both Lyle and Eric Menendez have testified to with regard to the affair and the obsession regarding the affair and the suicidal nature of her feelings, her inability to function, her reporting periods of crying and not being able to get out of bed, which is consistent with what Eric Menendez testified he observed and then related to his brother Rob Menendez.
Detailing her statements to Dr. Cox, what occurred and when it occurred, things of that sort.
Yes, and also Mr. Menendez attended a couple of those sessions and made some revelations to Dr. Cox about a dilemma he had in terms of whether he should reveal what information Mrs. Menendez had in terms of his infidelity, what she suspected, which was substantially greater, and what the truth was, which was substantially greater yet. And his conversations with Dr. Cox regarding whether he should reveal more of the information and confirm her suspicions or continue to deny it. And Dr. Cox, having seen both of them having discussions with regard to the family dynamics, to be able to render his opinions with regard to the interaction between Mr. and Mrs. Menendez and how they related to their children.
All right. And what time frame was Cox?
He was fall of 86 into early 87. Right.
Okay. And
He saw her 18 times, and then Dr. Summerfield picks up after that. Dr. Summerfield saw her 100 times. And saw her into the period of time shortly before her death.
and what you want from Summerfield?
Dr. Summerfield can comment, as Dr. Cox came on the alcohol and drug dependence, the obsession with regard to the girlfriend Louise, the traveling to New York to see her, the calling her, the constant talk of suicide, which is still going on immediately before her death, the suicide attempts, the one that results in her hospitalization, and he has genuine concerns. His desire to hospitalize her because he feels that he needs to take her out of the control of on the other end of the very resistant. Is in a great deal of pain and is very resistant to discussing any of the underlying causes, focusing merely over and over again on the affair with Louise. Talks about how she can't get over it, reminds Jose of it on an almost daily basis. She's always bringing it up and the conflict that's causing in their marriage because he's tired of hearing her complain about it. She can neither leave nor get over it. Talks about the fact that she discusses her relationship with her children in two important areas, one of which is that whenever Lila is coming home, she expresses her jealousy with regard to his appearance on the scene, meaning she loses Jose's attention, and also the fact that her alliance in allegiance is clearly to Jose Menendez rather than to her children. Describes her instability and outbursts, and the fact she discusses with him on a number of occasions how she behaves toward the children, and he observes that it's displaced anger that rightfully belongs to Jose Menendez, that she's taking out the children.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay, we have all the jurors here. Let me hear the people's response briefly.
Well, it appears that much of what's being sought by the therapist is for a hearsay purpose, that is to prove, in fact, she went to New York and to prove many of the things that she did when she related to Dr. Cox. They are being offered to prove the matter of certain within them, and therefore they are hearsay, and there's no exception that applies. Now, I'm sure that as to certain things, the defense would argue that under 1250, they show her state of mind. But their argument has some internal inconsistencies, which is that she was very secretive, even with these doctors. Therefore, there would be a lack of trustworthiness associated with her revelations. And under 1252, they would not be admissible to show her state of mind. It's of interest to note that there is no nexus between Mrs. Menendez's being upset with her husband's affair with Louise and the events of August the 20th, or even August the 15th or August the 20th of 1989. I think this is an attempt at further character assassination of her. As far as Mr. Menendez's revelations and dilemmas vis-a-vis Dr. Cox, I don't think he had anywhere near sufficient information to draw conclusions about Mr. Menendez or the relationship between the Menendez parents and their children. This is speculative, and basically it's hearsay.
Did you wish to respond?
Mr. Chairman, with regard to Dr. Cox, he's had 18 sessions with her, so he certainly had an opportunity to observe her demeanor, to report on the interaction he observed between Jose and Kitty Menendez, to describe the deep depression and suicidal nature of her condition at that time, which is all corroborative of, as I have indicated, of what Eric Menendez indicates he had observed. And with regard to the comment of the lack of trustworthiness, Dr. Summerfield says that she was one of the most secretive patients he'd ever had in 100 sessions. He did manage to give some information, and I think that it is just exactly the converse of what the prosecution argues, that they have strong indicia of trustworthiness, and that it was very hard for her to reveal. She saw him 100 times, and she was able to give up some information. And I think that the nature of the therapeutic relationship is that as time goes on and the more practice do it, we reveal more and more. And that Dr. Summerfield saw this relationship as something that would take 4 to 5 years before she could ever reveal core issues, although she did reveal some surface issues about the relationship in her own father's family, with her own parents.
All right, let me interrupt for a moment. Let's have the jurors come in to the jury room so that we don't have to wait outside. All right, Ms. Lansing was still speaking. Okay.
And I have one point, Your Honor, before she responds, which is on the issue of trustworthiness. The fact that these statements are corroborated by other witnesses who have testified in the case is also, I think, an additional indicator of reliability in this case. There's nothing contradictory in the records for what the other witnesses have testified to. And in fact, the whole point of putting this evidence on is to corroborate other evidence that has been produced.
All right, yes.
Briefly, we interviewed Dr. Summerfield, and he indicated that he did feel that Mrs. Menendez had a secret, but he felt that what it was is that she had been abused as a child. In addition, another fact which is contained within his notes is that she discussed the fact that she felt her sons were sociopaths, and so I assume the defense would also would not object to that particular evidence coming in. But it seems to me that whatever she may have said, that this is still hearsay, that is unreliable, and there's also something fundamentally unfair about a dead woman's psychiatric records being opened up and used, to attack the character.
All right.
I just want to say really quickly,
Yeah.
this evidence has been misconstrued as character evidence. I think at this point in the trial, when the concerns are the interaction of the members of this family, the availability of this mother to ameliorate problems with the children, we're not attacking the character, we're explaining what happened.
Well, it is character evidence and the way it's being produced. There is the other argument that Mr. Bird alluded to, corroborative evidence, but it really is character evidence to a great extent.
I think it simply explains actions on the part of the individual that might otherwise be difficult to understand.
That's what character evidence tends to do.
But I mean, it's not character assassination.
I didn't use the word assassination. I said it's character evidence.
Additionally, Your Honor, I believe that our experts have indicated that they relied on this information.
All right. What happens is that the parties take absolute positions. One side says nothing should be introduced. The other side says everything should be introduced. In regards especially to these witnesses, I have reviewed again the materials submitted by the defense, and it's an exhibit that we marked last week, and I'll find the number here at some point and put it in the record. It's an envelope of reports prepared by the defense of interviews with these therapists, and the records themselves were also summarized to some extent in the brief filed by the defense. The prosecution's position is that much of the material is hearsay, and I have to agree with that. There is a lot of hearsay in the reports of these witnesses. The defense position is that the experts who've testified relied upon these reports or the diagnoses, and that's also true. Some observations made by these therapists are admissible. The concern the court has is twofold. One, the hearsay aspect of it, and the fact that counsel will seek to have these witnesses recount to the jury the detail of statements made by Mrs. Menendez, not to just prove that that was her state of mind, but for the real purpose of proving that these events occurred. And the defense position as well is corroborative of the fact these events occurred. It's still hearsay in that the defense is proposing that the jury accept what Mrs. Menendez said is true, and that these events happened. Therefore, it corroborates the testimony of the defendants. It's still hearsay, no matter how you cut it. But the observations of the witness or the witnesses regarding the instability of Mrs. Menendez, her suicidal ideation, if she expressed such, things of that nature, and a diagnosis of her condition, if they formed such an opinion, would be admissible and could be testified to. But to go into the detail of what she said about every event and how she described certain events as proposed by the defense would entail introduction of hearsay material. Obviously, if the prosecution cross-examined these witnesses as to the basis of their opinions about certain things, it could open the door to the substance of what was said to the witnesses. And at that point, it could come before the trier of fact. I'm also concerned about the cumulative aspect of this. You have three witnesses who essentially will be testifying about pretty much the same thing. Do we really need all three? Number one, and number two, some are more remote than others. Some have more relevance as to time frame. I agree with the prosecution that Mrs. Menendez expressions of what she did and how she dealt with specifically and what information she had about her husband's affair is still hearsay and would introduce hearsay evidence before the trier of fact. The fact that she was obsessed by that or obsessed by certain things that were occurring in her son's lives, that could be admissible evidence. But the details of things that she said would not. Jose Menendez's statements of dilemma and that sort of thing, from the way it's been characterized, would be too remote and speculative and unreliable to be introduced. Doesn't express a state of mind of any relevant issue in this case. And is not admissible. That relates to Dr. Cox. In regards to Mrs. Menendez being extremely secretive, that can be described by a witness, but as to a witness's opinion as to what she was keeping secret, that sort of thing is pure speculation and wouldn't be admissible. So what I would do is suggest that counsel go through this list of 3 witnesses and see whether or not there's really a need for all 3, and perhaps one would suffice, and stipulation as to certain other factors that might have otherwise been testified to by one or more other witnesses, so that we don't consume undue amounts of time and present cumulative evidence, which otherwise would occur if all 3 witnesses testified. So for the reasons I've articulated, and also because the evidence would be cumulative if we have all 3 testify, the court will partially sustain the people's objection and ask that counsel review the matter further so that we can limit the extent of this evidence so it doesn't take up as much time as it otherwise could, the way it's being proposed here.
Would the people be able to inquire Dr. Summerfield about Mrs. Menendez's concerns that her sons were sociopaths?
I don't know how that would come out. We had some discussion about that at the sidebar. There was some objection by the defense during the examination of one of the experts. I don't recall which one. I don't know how that occurred, and we did have, I think, discussions twice on that subject. The fact that the subject of sociopath only has relevance in the way Dr. Oziel defined that term for the defendants in his session with them. I'd have to know more about what it was that Summerfield said to her and what she said to him. And it might have some relevance and be admissible depending on what was said. So I really can't make a decision under Section 352 of the Evidence Code on that subject at this point without perhaps hearing his testimony or further offer proof.
Just to the court's ruling on hearsay objection, we would ask in the alternative that if the court does not admit the statements for their truth, that the court admit them for the limited purpose of showing the material upon which the experts rely, and to then instruct the jury that the statements are not be submitted for their truth, as the court has done consistently with respect to other witnesses who have testified to out-of-court statements.
When you say experts, you're talking about these witnesses who are proposed to be testifying?
Well, it really has 2 aspects to it. One, if the court is going to allow, for instance, Dr. Summerfield to testify to a diagnosis, it would be important for us to show the basis for that opinion, since the mere opinion without the reasons for it, it's not going to be a sufficient help to us. And second of all, it also is the case that the child abuse experts have relied on statements contained in Dr. Summerfield's notes, not for their truth, but again, show the basis for their opinion.
Well, the court is relying on the case of People versus Coleman at 38 Cal 3rd 69 for the proposition that the court has wide discretion under Section 352 of the Evidence Code to limit or exclude hearsay information that is being relied upon by experts and other witnesses. And the totality of the evidence that's being suggested here, and it's really minimized by the way it's been presented by Ms. Lansing. There's a great depth of information that is potentially the subject of their testimony. We can go on for days listening to everything Mrs. Menendez told these individuals, and the prosecution can then bring out whatever else they want that was said to the witness. And it is all hearsay. And under Section 352 of the Evidence Code, I don't find that at this point there has been a sufficient showing that there is a need for all of this information to be presented to the trier of fact to support the opinions expressed by these witnesses. Perhaps there will be, depending on what is presented, but I don't find it at this point. I do find that the defense should have an opportunity, if it chooses, to present the observations of these witnesses, their diagnosis, if it's significant to them, but to go into details of what a patient told the therapist throughout these sessions with the great potential of the jury then accepting these things for their truth, no matter what the court's instruction is, and the undue consumption of time here, and just the confusion of the issues and misleading the jury. At this point, the people's objection is going to be sustained. So go back and reevaluate it and see whether there's something here that you can use that would not be cumulative and would support the position that you put forward here, that you want to support the expert opinions that you've had so far, things of that sort. But we have to show some discretion here, not just the court, but counsel in how you produce this stuff. And if you want to discuss it further after you've thought about it, I'll be glad to. All right, are we ready otherwise with the jury? Okay, let's get both juries in then and we'll proceed. Court and the witness on the witness stand and everyone else present, you may continue your cross-examination.
Mr. Baralt, are you familiar with the cooking of your mother-in-law, Maria Menendez?
Yes.
Did Maria Menendez, prior to her son's death, frequently use lemon in her cooking?
Objection, Your Honor, relevant.
Overall.
Does she frequently use lemon in her cooking?
Not in the cooking per se, after the cooking.
Well, what does she use the lemon for?
To put it on the meat primarily.
So after something was cooked, she'd use lemon as a condiment, like ketchup or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Baralt, now you indicated that you were present when some family members went through the IBM computer in the Menendez home looking for the will, correct?
Yes.
And I believe you indicated that it was your belief that even if such a will were found, that it would probably not be valid.
That's correct.
And did you get that information from someone, or was that just something you knew on your own?
This is something that I thought I knew, yes.
Okay. But in spite of that belief, were you part of the group that decided to go back to the computer after the family had arrived in New Jersey and see if something further could be found?
I had conversations about that with Carlos Menendez.
And were you aware of the fact that on August the 31st of 1989, Lyle Menendez traveled to California and hired his own computer expert?
After the fact.
All right. And did you have any conversation with Lyle Menendez before August the 31st in regards to efforts you or other family members had made to access the computer?
Yes, I believe so.
All right. Do you know generally the nature of the conversations you had with him?
The description of there were some files on the computer and we had tried to get them and that they didn't seem to be anything there, but that we were going to try some more. Spot it.
All right. Did you indicate to him in this conversation that the files had something to do with a potential will?
Sure.
All right. And you said that after the fact, you found out that Lyle Menendez had traveled to California. Could you tell me, did you find this out from Lyle Menendez or did you find it out from someone else?
I believe I found it out through Carlos Menendez.
And did you ever have any conversation with Lyle Menendez about his travels on August the 31st?
I don't believe so.
Did you ever discuss with him, did you ever express any dissatisfaction with him over traveling to California and erasing the computer?
I may have, but I don't recall.
All right. Were you happy about the fact that he had gone to California and erased the computer?
Objection, Your Honor.
Grounds of relevancy?
Yes, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Did you ever have any discussions with Eric Menendez about the family's attempts to access the computer?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
12, sorry.
I probably did not.
Was most of your contact during this period of time with the two brothers, with Lyle Menendez versus Eric Menendez?
That's correct.
Sometime after you came to California on the Monday following the killings of Kitty and Jose Menendez, did you ever participate or did you ever see other people gather up family memorabilia such as scrapbooks or photographs or things like that?
When?
During that week, right after the killings.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Were you ever made aware or did you ever see boxes or any kind of gathering of family memorabilia anytime after that week?
I saw lots and lots of boxes.
Okay. Did you ever see boxes containing photographs?
Specifically containing photographs? No.
Did you see any boxes which partly contain photographs?
You cannot imagine how many boxes there were. I mean, there were boxes upon boxes of stuff.
Now, the boxes are these boxes that were from people packing up the house?
There were boxes of that were on the floor that contained relatively recent things. There were boxes that were all the way from 10 years prior that were never unpacked.
All right, so are you talking about boxes that were in the house at the time that you arrived on that Monday?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Did you, how many times have you met with the defense attorneys in this case?
With the defense attorneys?
Yes.
Many, many times.
Could you give me an approximation? Would you, 5 times, 10 times, 50 times? I mean, could you give me a ballpark figure?
Oh, gosh. Couple of dozen times? More? I don't know.
Were you ever shown any family photographs or family memorabilia?
Excuse me?
Were you ever shown any family photographs or memorabilia during your discussions with the defense attorneys in this case?
I think I saw once a little album with pictures.
Did you have discussions with the defense attorneys about your proposed testimony in this case?
Yes.
Did you ever see any writings of Kitty Menendez when you were in the Los Angeles area between that Monday and Friday after the killings?
I'm sure I did.
Okay, when you say you're sure you did, do you remember the type of writings that you saw?
Oh, I went through many, many boxes that had, and the desk that was on her bedroom, and that contained documents of one kind or another. And some were recent, some were like the will, 10 years old or 8 years old.
When did you go through the boxes?
It was either, I believe it was Wednesday or Thursday. I'm not sure.
And that would have been the Wednesday or Thursday immediately following the Sunday when Mr. and Mrs. Menendez were killed?
That is correct.
Now, you're the executor of the estate, is that correct?
That's correct.
Have you obtained any of the family possessions?
Some.
Do you know what happened to the other possessions?
Well, most of them are either have been thrown away, or they may still be at the Calabasas property, or they may be at with the defense attorneys, or they may be conceivably with Maria Menendez, or and I might have a couple, a few things.
Do you know how much property the defense attorneys have in this case?
Not for sure.
Have you ever seen boxes or groups of property in the possession of the defense attorneys?
I know they went through several. They went through the records a couple of times at least and selected things from there. But I don't know for sure what quantity of materials or what they actually took. I did request for receipts, but they mentioned that when the trial was over, they would give me something.
Okay, so you have no personal knowledge at this time as to what the defense attorneys took, is that correct?
That's correct.
And they never provided you with a receipt for the things that were taken, is that correct?
That's correct.
You indicated that you'd gone to see a probate lawyer recommended by Dr. Oziel, who you didn't care for. Did you ultimately obtain a probate lawyer?
Yes, I did.
Do you know who recommended that lawyer?
So it's a friend of the family's, my family.
From your family?
Yes, a friend of my family, yes.
And when did you first meet the defense attorneys in this case, if you recall?
I believe I met Leslie at the North Elm Street house.
Would that have been after the arrests?
Yes.
After you went back to New Jersey, after the memorial service in Los Angeles, did you ever ask either of the defendants, or did you ever discuss with either of the defendants the events of the night of August the 20th?
Could you, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Certainly.
After what?
Okay, do you understand the time period I'm referring to?
No, I
Okay.
missed it.
After the memorial service in Los Angeles, you and other family members returned to New Jersey, correct?
Sure.
And over different periods of time, one or both of the defendants would stay with you in your home in New Jersey, correct?
Eric would visit and Lyle would stay.
All right, so Eric was there, I believe your wife indicated, no more than 24 hours generally.
That's correct.
All right. During the month or two following the killings of Jose and Kitty Menendez, did you ever discuss with either Lyle Menendez or his brother Eric Menendez what they did on the night of August 20th?
No.
Okay. Did they ever indicate to you, did either of the defendants ever indicate to you that they come home and found their parents?
We didn't discuss it.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. Correction. I believe that was, it may have been discussed once.
And with whom did you discuss it once?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. Probably with Lyle, because Lyle's the one that was around us.
Did Lyle Menendez ever do anything before he was arrested to indicate to you that he had killed his parents?
No.
Did he ever do anything to indicate to you that he hadn't killed his parents?
No.
As to Eric Menendez, did he ever indicate to you before his arrest that he had participated in the killings of his parents?
No.
Did he ever do anything to indicate to you or to lead you to believe that he had not been involved?
There was one, I don't know whether this led me to believe anything. But there was one time that he said that he was sorry about the death of her mother.
That was Eric Menendez told you that?
Yes.
After the defendants were arrested before the fall of 1990, now the arrests were in March of 1990, before you were told what you testified to on direct, did you ever go to visit either of the defendants in the county jail?
Yes.
And did you ever discuss with them whether or not they had committed the crime?
No.
Okay. Now, I believe you indicated, pardon me?
I'm sorry, that is not correct.
All right. What's the correction?
I did at some point in time after that discuss with them the fact that they had done it.
All right. Now, was that the occasion that you've referred to in your direct examination, or is that some other occasion?
This was when I first learned.
All right. And how was it that you first learned?
It was revealed to us by our attorney.
By your attorney?
Yes,
And who was that?
Steve Goldberg.
Okay. Mr. Goldberg is the attorney for the estate. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And he's not the attorney for the defendants. Is that correct?
Well, he was the attorney. He also acted as an attorney for them in respect to a couple of things.
So he was the attorney for the estate and also the attorney for the defendants, correct?
No, not for the defense, for the kids.
In other matters aside from the criminal matters, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, so your first knowledge about their participation was from Mr. Goldberg, correct?
Yes.
All right, and then did you personally have discussions with them?
Yes.
And did each of them individually say that they had been molested?
I believe so. Yes.
Well, when you say believe so, are you sure, or are you guessing, or?
No, I'm sure.
Now, was that in a joint conversation with both of them, or did you have individual conversations with them?
It was a joint conversation, individually joint conversation. We were at the attorney's room in the jail.
Were there any attorneys with you?
The estate attorney.
And that was Mr. Goldberg?
That's correct.
And when Lyle Menendez told you that he had been sexually molested, did he tell you by whom?
Yes.
What did he say?
By his mother.
He said by his mother.
Yes.
Did he indicate to you at that time that he'd been molested by his father?
No.
When he told you he'd been molested by his mother, did you believe him?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Now, Eric Menendez also had a conversation with you at or about the same time.
Yes.
And did he tell you he'd been molested as well?
Yes.
And did he tell you by whom?
By his father.
Did you believe him?
They make the same objection, or that's an improper question.
During that period of time when you spoke to them about this molestation, did either one of them, let me back up. Did Lyle Menendez at that time tell you that he killed in self-defense?
No,
Did Eric Menendez tell you he killed in self-defense?
no.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Redirect examination?
Mr. Baralt, when you had this meeting that you described with Steve Goldberg, were the specifics of the killings discussed?
Yes,
And did they discuss everything did Lyle and Eric tell you everything that happened that week before?
no.
Did they talk about what had happened on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or Friday?
The specifics were relayed to us by Mr. Goldberg.
But in terms of, I'm talking about the discussion you had with Lyle and Eric Menendez. Did they discuss?
Few things were discussed in specific at that time.
But they didn't discuss all of the details
No,
of
that's
the week
correct.
before. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Was this a very difficult discussion?
Very,
Were people emotional?
very much so.
And how were people showing their emotions?
Eric was crying. Lyle was, his voice broken up.
And your
Very
wife?
emotional.
Okay.
And of course, my wife was also very emotional.
And were you emotional?
I was emotional, but not as much as the other three.
So was this a setting in which you could ask a lot of detailed questions, get a lot of answers?
No, it was not an appropriate setting for that.
So they gave you some information and you just accepted that?
That's correct.
You didn't ask questions?
We asked very few questions.
Mrs. Bazanich had talked to you about Jose Menendez's personality, and I believe you said he was jovial and charming. Great guy to have on your side.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct? You worked with him in Chicago, is that correct?
That is correct.
You got to see him around other business people, is that correct?
Yes.
And what type of interaction did he have with subordinates particularly?
Objection, relevance, remoteness.
Overall.
But sometimes it would be a very normal conversation if there was a situation where something that should have been done, say, for him was not done. You wouldn't want to be there if
Why
that
do
were
you
the
say you
case.
wouldn't want to be there? What would happen?
Because he made sure that he was strong enough in his statements to you that you felt quite embarrassed and possibly very small, and you don't want that to be repeated.
Was this done in front of other people?
Sometimes, it's not always.
But would sometimes he take a subordinate who didn't measure up and humiliate him in front of the group?
Primarily, if that subordinate was said something in public against him, and then he would respond in kind, put you way down.
Okay, so if that subordinate said something critical of Jose or something that embarrassed him, he would respond in a very harsh manner?
That's correct.
Is it fair to say that being embarrassed in public was something that he was not going to tolerate?
That is correct.
And he would respond in a quite severe manner?
Yes.
And you saw this on more than one occasion, I take it?
Yeah, sure.
You were asked about Kitty Menendez and her personality. Was she the type of person who was engaged in a lot of projects and always sort of running late?
Definitely.
And was she a personally strong person?
You mean the physical strength?
Physical strength.
Yes, I would think so.
And was she strong in terms of her personality?
Yes, I think so.
And you had the opportunity to be in their home a number of times.
Many times.
And what was the condition of their home?
It depended. It depended on the time of day, whether any visitors were coming. It could be quite messy, or it might be picked up.
And when you say quite messy, what are we talking about? Just the morning's newspapers are still on the breakfast table, or are we talking about more than that?
Oh, it could be the morning newspapers and the dishes and perhaps a couple of shoes laying around. Things that should not be in a neat and picked up living room could be there.
And you,
A half-played chess game, whatever.
were you aware of of Jose's need to have someone's attention when he was talking to them?
He was very good at that.
And were there times when he wanted the attention of, say, his family members and he wasn't getting it, and he would do something to get their attention?
I don't know. I don't know.
You don't remember ever seeing him dump drawers of silverware or empty cabinets or anything like that to try and get people's attention?
Jose?
Yes.
It could have been, but I don't remember any specific time when I saw that.
You indicated that the children, that you believed that Jose loved his children. And I think you described that he wanted them educated in the fashion that he thought best. Is that correct?
That's correct.
How was the decision made in terms of what was best for the children?
I guess he thought about it and talked about it with Kitty and himself. I have the actual mechanics of the decision. I'm not privy to it.
You have 4 daughters, is that correct?
That's correct.
And several of them went to college, I take it?
Yes.
And who picked their college?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Were there differences in your family and in the Menendez family with regard to who made the decisions about what their children were going to do?
Objection irrelevant.
Overall.
In terms of the colleges themselves,
Yes.
I'm pretty sure there were. I can't.
What were they?
Speculation based upon the nature of the answer. I'm pretty sure there were.
Right. Objection overruled. The answer will stand.
What were the differences?
I think Jose had definite ideas as to the education of his kids, and he was going to follow through with them. I didn't see either Lyle or Eric object to his decisions, but I did have that conversation. I think I recounted before with regards to Lyle in Princeton and his very determined thoughts as to where he should go, and that's what I based my answer on primarily. It's that particular discussion with Jose.
Did Jose and Kitty exert a great deal of control over Lyle and Eric with regard to decisions in their life?
A tremendous amount of influence on their decision.
And did either Lyle or Eric seem to resist, or did they just go along with the program?
I would assume they resisted, but I didn't see it.
Did you ever see them resist their father?
No.
Did they seem to respect their father?
Yes.
Did they seem to fear their father?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Were you aware of what decisions were being made with regard to the college that Eric would go to?
I know Jose and Kitty wanted him at UCLA
And how do you know that?
because there was consideration for some colleges in the East Coast, among them Brown, I believe. And there was a commentary around the dinette table to the effect that they would like to have him close to home.
You indicated that you saw some changes in the relationship between Kitty and Jose over time. Is that correct?
Yes,
Now, you talked about times when Kitty would hit Jose.
yes.
She would hit him with a closed fist.
Excuse me?
She would hit him with a closed fist
Oh, yeah,
and
Yes.
seemed to hit him hard.
very much so.
And was that something that went on throughout their married life, or was that just confined to a particular period?
It was whenever Kitty was frustrated or Jose played a trick on her and she would just and
To
hit
punch him? Okay. Now, were you, was there a period of time in which Kitty left Jose?
There was, yes.
And was this because she suspected he had had an affair?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained. Objection sustained.
Were you involved in getting her to come back to the home in that incident?
Yes.
Did she leave for 4 days?
Don't recall exact amount of time, but she did leave at least overnight.
And was this because she believed that he had had an affair?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Did she say why she left?
She said she suspected that he had an affair.
So she left the home, is that correct?
Yes, she did.
Did she take the children with her?
No, she did not.
And did you talk to Jose about trying to put the marriage back together?
Yes, I did.
And did he want the marriage put back together?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Overruled. Can we have a time frame as to when this happened?
1980, does that sound about right?
That's about right. 1980, 81, somewhere around there.
Did you have a discussion with Jose about putting the marriage back together again?
Yes, and he was ambivalent about it.
Did he indicate that he loved her or that he didn't love her?
Let me put it this way, he did not indicate that he loved her.
What was the interest in putting the marriage back together?
The family unit.
Did he need her to do things with regard to the children?
Objection leading.
Objection sustained.
Did he say to you why it was he needed her in the home?
He needed her to be a part of the a family unit and take care of things around the house and be there for the kids and take them wherever they had to go and essentially keep the house the family together, to help him as a wife and social functions, etc.
But he didn't say, I need her back because I love her.
No, he did not.
Do you remember Lyle's girlfriends being an issue with the family in terms of criticism of his girlfriends?
Yes, yes.
And what do you remember in that regard?
That he felt that none of them were good enough for Lyle.
Did there seem to be concern on Kitty's part as well in terms of whether these young women were appropriate or not?
Yes, but not as much.
Did there seem to be concern about whether these young women were after his money?
Objection Vegas to the parent.
Sustained.
With regard to Jose, was there a concern over whether these young women were after Lyle's money?
Oh, only one.
Which one was that?
I believe it was Christie. I'm
And-
not sure, but I think so.
And was there any concern on Kitty's part in that regard?
Yes, and I don't. It's either one or both of them expressed that concern. It's the type of concern that was expressed around that dinette table.
You said that you saw some sort of kindness on Kitty's part when Lyle and Eric would be fighting and Eric would cry. Is that right?
That's correct.
And did Jose encourage the boys to be competitive?
Yes, he did.
Did he encourage the boys to fight?
No, I don't think they encouraged them to fight.
When they were fighting, is this when they're teenagers or when they're little kids?
They're between 9 and 13, something like that.
And would Kitty, you said that she would intervene and tell them to stop.
Yes.
And would you see her comfort Eric afterwards?
No.
You said that Jose had a sense of humor. I think you described him as jovial.
Yes.
Did he play tricks on people?
Very much. Yes.
Did he sometimes embarrass people?
Primarily Kitty.
And did she like being embarrassed?
Objection, cause for speculation.
Rephrase the question.
Did she seem to respond with good humor when he would embarrass her this way, or were these the types of situations where she would end up hitting him?
Sometimes after several months after the fact, she would be very laugh about it, but not at the time.
Did it seem to hurt her?
Sometimes.
You were asked about what it takes to create sports champions. I believe you have a daughter who's an excellent swimmer. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Did she also have friends growing up?
Yes, she did.
And did she have a social life?
Very limited.
And whose choice was it for her to swim? Was it yours or hers?
It was primarily hers.
And when she lost, how did you react?
How did we react?
Yes, if she lost, how did you react?
Objection irrelevant.
Overall.
We would console her, say there's a next time, and that was not her day, whatever.
Were you ever around when Lyle and Eric lost?
Yes,
And did you see Kitty and Jose's reaction under those circumstances?
primarily, yes.
And what was their reaction?
It was primarily a silence and I guess disappointment. They were mad.
They were mad?
Yeah, they didn't like that.
They ever console the boys?
I didn't see it.
Now, I believe you indicated that when you came to California after Kitty and Jose died, a will was found on either Wednesday or Thursday. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And someone else found the will but told you about it. Is that correct?
Yes.
And after that will was found, did you continue looking for another will?
Yes.
And why was that?
Because of the conversations I had had before with him, to the effect that he was in the process of writing a new will.
So the conversations were that he was in the process of writing the new will. Now, with regard to his statements about the boys and what their knowledge was, did you say that what did he tell you the boys believed about whether they were in or out of the will?
That he had
Objection,
told.
double hearsay.
What did he tell you he had told the boys?
That he had told boys that they were no longer in the will.
And these conversations were end of 88, beginning of 89, and then another one early summer.
Well, that particular one was only the second conversation, which was early summer.
Okay, that he'd already told them they were out of the will.
Yes.
And after you found the old will in the house, you then went to the bank still looking for a new will. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Excuse me. And when you went to the bank looking for the new will, was Lyle with you?
Yes, he was.
And was Brian Anderson with you?
I believe so.
After this discussion with Jose Menendez, in which he said that he'd already told his sons that they were out of the will and he was thinking of drafting a new will, disinheriting them, did he go ahead and embark upon the purchase of a condominium for Lyle Menendez?
Yes, he did.
And to your knowledge, was Lyle Menendez supposed to return to Princeton in the fall, and Jose Menendez and Kitty Menendez were going to be paying for that?
Yes, that was the plan.
You referred to the stealing of flags from an eating club.
Yes,
Was that sort of a college prank type of situation?
Objection calls for conclusion on item witness.
Overruled.
that was my belief.
After you found the old will, in addition to going to the bank, to the safety deposit box looking for a new will, what other efforts did you make to find the new will you believed existed?
I contacted every attorney that I became aware of that had any contacts with Jose.
Did you ever find a new will?
No, I did not.
With regard to the reference to the will and the computer, you said that you believed that such a will, if it existed, wouldn't be valid. Is that correct?
That was my belief, yes.
Okay. And you expressed that belief in front of Lyle Menendez?
Yes, I did.
And that was in California?
I believe I had a couple of conversations in which I expressed that belief. Well, perhaps even both in California as well as New Jersey.
I believe you indicated that you had a meeting with the people from Live Entertainment.
Yes,
Is that correct?
yes,
And this was in the same first week that we were talking about, right after Kitty and Jose died. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And was there some discussion regarding a $5 million insurance policy?
Yes, there was.
And what was that?
There was a clause in Jose's employment contract which provided for a $5 million life insurance contract. And it was right there in black and white in a signed copy. The company, we brought that up to the company, and the company said that there would have been, had Jose taken a physical examination, but that he had not done that.
Was that a surprise that he had not taken a physical examination?
Objection irrelevant.
Are you asking this witness's reaction?
Did Lyle Menendez appear to know already that he hadn't taken the physical examination?
Objection calls for speculation, lack of
Sustained.
foundation.
Objection sustained.
Were there any comments made by any members of the family with regard to whether Jose Menendez had taken the physical or not?
Yes, it seems that a couple of people knew about that.
Who knew about that?
I understand Lyle and also her Lyle's grandmother.
Knew that Jose had not taken the physical.
Yes.
And with regard to items that were in the house, were there a number of people that had access to the Beverly Hills house in terms of other family members
Objection dangerous to time.
Sustained.
during that first week?
Access to the house?
Were there a number of other family members who were in and out of the house during that first week?
There was just about every family member visited the house at one point or another during that first week.
And after that first week, did various family members come back at other times?
Some of them did, yeah.
And did Maria Menendez, the grandmother, move into the house?
Yes, she did.
And were the police in the house at various points in time?
There was people from Bel Air Patrol.
And did the Beverly Hills Police Department, to your knowledge, go in with a search warrant at some point in time to seize a computer and some other items?
Yes, they did.
We have just a moment.
Yes.
Mr. Baralt, when you went to the county jail and you were informed killed his parents, did he tell you how the killings had occurred on August 20th?
There was relatively little amount of communication at that in terms of detail.
Was there any detail given at all?
Relatively little during that meeting.
Okay, can you remember what detail was given during that meeting?
There was detail with regards to the reasons for the killing.
And what were you told about the reasons for the killings?
That there had indeed been molestations.
So you were told that the killings occurred because of the molestation?
Yes.
Was that by both defendants that told you that?
Well, the story was given to us by Steve Goldberg.
Objection, or I move to strike them because hearsay.
Well, let me hear a little further expansion on this and then we'll deal with the objection.
Pardon me?
When was this told to the witness by Mr. Goldberg?
Okay, how far in advance of the defendants telling you in jail was it that Mr. Goldberg gave you this information?
Or was it while they were at the jail? Let's find out what.
All right, when Mr. Goldberg told you, I believe Mr. Goldberg was the one that broke the news to you, is that correct?
That is correct.
And where were you physically located when he did that?
At his office.
And the defendants were not present, is that correct?
That is correct.
Was it during that time that Mr. Goldberg gave you the few amount of the details that you had?
That was where we got most of the details.
All right, the objection then is sustained as to the answer the witness gave as to the reasons for the killing as hearsay.
And
And the jury's admonished to disregard it.
Mr. Baralt, did you love Jose Menendez?
Yes, I did.
Did you love Kitty Menendez?
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Mr. Baralt, do you love Gareth Menendez?
Yes, I do.
Do you love Lyle Menendez?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. You may sit down. Okay, is there no examination in front of the other jury? Wasn't,
Oh, yes, we did them.
okay. Well, why don't you stay here then, sir? You're not through quite yet. Almost. This way. You almost made it. How long will this take? 10 minutes. Okay. All right, we're going to have some examination where the gold jury only will be present and the blue jury can take a break. And if you could come back at 3:30, hopefully by then we'll have completed the examination and if not, we'll let you know what's going on. Don't discuss the matter with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We'll see you back here at 3:30. And we'll now continue with the gold jury only for this portion of the testimony. And if it does appear that it's longer than 10 minutes, we'll let you know. We'll then.
I had to go answer the door.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine.
I had to get a water.
Yeah, appreciate that. All right, but if it does look like it's going to get into a little longer than the time estimate, we'll take a break and give you a chance to stretch your legs here. Of course, we're never wrong with our time estimates, so there's no reason to believe that we'll be wrong now. All right.
Mr. Baralt, I believe you testified that you are the executor of the estate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And were you involved in Lyle Menendez's purchase of a restaurant?
Yes, I was.
And why was it that you became involved in that?
Initially because Lyle asked me to get involved.
At what level? Was he asking for advice or for you to invest or for you to work there? What was he asking for?
It was sort of like a de facto involvement. He was telling me that he was going to be buying a restaurant.
And did he need your approval to do that?
No, he did not need my approval.
Did he need your assistance with regard to financing?
Yes, he did.
And did he talk to you in detail about what it was he was going to do and what his plans were for the restaurant?
A number of times.
And was somebody else involved in it besides you in the discussions of the purchase of the restaurant?
A number of people were.
Who else was involved?
I believe Brian Anderson was, Steve Goldberg was, my wife was, and there were a number of other friends of Lyle's that were involved.
And did you at some point make the decision to go ahead with the purchase of the restaurant?
No, I did not make that decision.
Was the decision made?
The decision was made by Lyle.
But where did the money come from?
He was trying to get financing on his own and was unable to do so. And at the very tail end, he asked whether the estate could provide funds for the acquisition.
And did the estate provide those funds?
Yes,
And were you involved in that decision?
I was involved in that decision, yes.
And why did you decide to do it?
Because I felt that it was, that Lyle had demonstrated a very strong desire to run this restaurant, that it would occupy him and focus his activities in a worthwhile endeavor.
And so you, along with other people, went along with that decision. Is that correct?
Yes,
And did he appear to be involved in running the restaurant?
very much so, yes.
And did you feel that this was in his best interest to have some sort of focus or structure to his life at this time?
That's exactly the reason why I did this, because he was going off in many directions and looking at all kinds of different investments and things that I knew were way above his capabilities in terms of financing and high finance and things of that sort.
Did he
No.
seem totally unrealistic during this period of time?
Judge Foster concludes on part of the
Rephrase the question.
In terms of trying to figure out what he was going to do with his life, did he seem to have a number of very unrealistic ideas?
Judge Foster speculation conclusions.
Yes, he seemed that way to me.
Okay, and did this restaurant seem like something that was realistic and doable?
Both realistic, doable, and he had a very, very high expectations and interest in it.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination?
May I just stand right there for a question? Mr. Baralt, the first you learned about this restaurant is that Lyle Menendez told you he was going to buy the restaurant.
That he was looking at it, yes.
All right, and did he tell you where the money was going to come from to purchase the restaurant the first time you discussed it with him?
No,
All right, and at that time, were you aware of how much money he had taken from his parents' estate or from the fact of his parents' death?
I was aware he had received insurance money, yes.
Were you aware of the amount?
Yes, I was.
About $325,000?
That's correct.
And were you aware of the cost of the restaurant, the purchase price?
And not the first time. That didn't come till much later.
All right, and much later, did you learn that the purchase price of the restaurant was approximately $550,000?
At the tail end, yes.
And that was when you agreed to supply money from the estate to purchase it, is that correct?
That is correct.
And at the time that you agreed to this particular transaction, did you believe that Lyle Menendez was not involved in the killings of his parents?
That is correct.
And I believe you indicated he attempted to get financing on his own, but was unable to, and then turned to you as the executive of the estate, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did he ever tell you anything about his difficulties in getting financing?
Yes, I believe he told me a couple of things I don't recall, but we did discuss that.
I'm nothing further.
Anything else?
Yes, what happened to the restaurant?
The restaurant went back to the prior owner.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor. And I think that was 10 minutes.
It's less than 10 minutes. They were wrong again. All right, we'll be in recess then until 3:30. Don't discuss this case with anyone before any final opinions about it. We'll resume at 3:30.